It feels impossible to tell the story of humans without spending time on the importance music has had on us. A part of this is because of how much of our history has been retained and passed on with it. Before we wrote things down on paper, we told stories and sang songs to our people over campfire. Music is called the universal language for a reason. Regardless of culture or background, we can always agree on what sounds good. So much so that music is used to invoke feeling in almost every social event I can think of. Parades, birthday parties, funerals, weddings. The power to invoke a feeling to its listener is so strong with music that I can predict how you might feel if I play one chord or another. If I was to play this, I know my listener is most likely to feel happy or excited. But if I was to play this, I would expect my listener to feel dark, uneasy, or sad. Music's ability to communicate feeling, no matter what language we speak or culture we are from, is what makes it so impactful. There's something about this connection we all share that makes music so important to us. My name is Stephen Batts, and this is the story of my two passions and their beautiful union. This is Technically Music. I spent a while thinking about the time I grew up during this process and how much of my childhood experiences have led me to making this documentary. I was born in 1991, and to many who remember, back then it was the dawn of the technological renaissance. I can vividly recall my grandparents' old black and white TV set that had knobs and an antenna, my mom's first pager, our house boombox and cases of cassette tapes. We had two house phones. One lived on the kitchen wall, and another you had to stick your finger in the little holes that reflected which number you were dialing and spin it. When I was about 7 or 8, I remember bothering my parents enough to get me my first game console. And with that, I became the head IT director for my family. Anytime a VCR needed to be plugged in, or anything that had an on-off switch, I was called to troubleshoot. Soon after, we got a computer for the house, with dial-up internet. Do you remember those AOL CDs you used to get in the mail to redeem internet minutes?
Every day, America Online is making it a little easier for people to live, work, and play.
Yeah. Whoa. Then, we all had iPods and cell phones. Being extra careful not to go over your text message limits or make plans to call your friend back after 9. Now, in the present day, our phones have become our computers, and we can do anything on them. Before I had my driver's license, technology had gone through so many changes, it was almost unrecognizable to the days of dial-up internet. My family, who come from Jamaica, all have a close connection with music. Because of this, music was an honored guest to everything we did.
Get it, Grandpa?
Every weekend, my aunts and uncles would come by and we would eat together. Most of the time, it would turn into a party with family of all kinds eating and talking with each other. But the most memorable thing to me, aside from being with family, was the sound system blasting music from morning till sunset. This is a tradition that we uphold till this day, and no family event is really started until the music starts playing. My dad, who grew up in Jamaica, was a drummer during his years there, and even had a fairly successful band. I could still remember the first time I saw him play drums. I remember thinking, that is the coolest thing ever. I have to know how to do that. Well, I did. I picked up music in any way I could and hounded my parents for drum lessons. It quickly became a part of who I was, And my parents, who were extremely supportive of my interest in music, got me into everything music related they could find. Pretty soon, my weeks were consumed with performances, lessons, and practice. When it came time for me to go to college, I was blessed enough to be accepted to Berklee College of Music, where I spent the next 4 years playing as many jam sessions, taking as many lessons, and doing as much as I could to make sure I was the best drummer I could be. This is Casey, a professional drummer and professor at Berklee College of Music. Casey was my private instructor for most of my time at Berklee, and really helped shape my musical sound, ear, and technique.
And we have right, left, right, left. Like it starts again. And then I inverted to finish it, like right, left, left, bass. So.
Apart from being an amazing professor, Casey is a highly successful touring and recording drummer, playing with acts such as Jean-Luc Ponty, Shaka Khan, Melissa Manchester, John Schofield, Stevie Wonder, and Chick Corea. One of my fondest memories about having private lessons with Casey was just the wealth of knowledge and stories he had during his time touring and recording. I met up with him after not seeing him for 10 years, and he agreed to talk with me about technology, music, and its current state today.
Until more recent times, like very recent times, the musician has always been dependent upon a production part of music being an outside person and facility. So we couldn't transfer our music to recording to the public without this middleman in between, because the technology has gotten to the point where we're able to do, from my little studio at home, I can produce the same quality that you're going to get at A&M or Capitol Records. Now, the processing and all of that, no. But the basic recordings, like recording a drum set, really high quality microphones, digital recording is going to get you like a serious basic track for someone to work with that knows more about production than I do. So what maybe would have cost, a couple $100,000 literally a few years ago, $20,000-$25,000, you're in for like a really high end, like basic digital studio. So that gives a power to the musician, and that's really important. But what it really says to me in relationship to what we're talking about here is that the musician no longer can really be just a musician,
Before music technology became accessible to musicians, being able to record your music and have other people hear it was very expensive and a difficult process. Tapes were the first piece of music technology that really took shape as the standard for recording audio and mass producing it, from 1954 up until the 1980s. This technology actually first appeared in 1928, when a German engineer by the name of Fritz Flümer invented a magnetic tape that could be used to record sound by using paper tape with iron oxide powder glued onto it. Recording with tape is achieved by the conversion of electrical audio signals from, let's say, a microphone or electric guitar into magnetic energy. This magnetized energy imprints itself on the magnetic tape as it spools through a number of rollers. In order to achieve playback of the recorded material, the magnetic imprint on the tape is converted back into electrical audio signals and amplified by a speaker. If that explanation didn't sound complicated enough, the material cost to create tape as well as the devices to record with them was extremely high. Prices of tapes still remain costly and are one of the more expensive ways of recording audio to this day.
Like if you're recording 2-inch tape, which is probably like a 24-track machine, which is like maybe peak technology in the 70s, 80s before they were like chaining stuff together. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm just guesstimating. But a 2-inch roll of tape today is probably $450. You don't get overdubs. I mean, like, and you're doing whole band passes like that. And depending upon what speed you're going at, 15 or 30 IPs, you're done after a couple of takes.
If you were to record something now, you would expect the quality of sound to be crystal clear. That is what we have grown accustomed to when recording digitally. When recording via tape, you would normally get some type of background noise, whether that was static or noise hiss. These sounds actually brought a level of warmth and character to projects recorded this way, though. It's really fascinating that we've spent so much time perfecting how to record perfectly, and now musicians and artists search for add-ons or plugins to bring these sounds back into their projects. This is Jeffrey, a friend of mine and fellow Berklee alum. We went to college together and remained friends after all this time. What you see Jeffrey doing right now is exactly what I described. Jeffrey has recorded some instrumental samples into a tape deck he has below his workstation to give it a retro sound. And now he is playing it back from the tape recorder into his computer for further editing and mixing. This is a common way that top producers use older music technology to create new works of art. Unlike my instrumental approach to my time at Berklee, Jeffrey went the other direction and learned and explored everything technical they had to offer. Jeffrey is now a talented and experienced producer, audio engineer, and multi-instrumentalist that has worked on many musical projects, big and small. He now resides in Nashville and has turned his apartment into an amazing studio. We got into a great discussion about our time at Berklee and how technology really changed how we as young musicians created and played music.
Like, you can literally make music and record it on your phone, and that could be done. Like, people have put songs out like that are literally just recorded like that. It's not like perfect or amazing, but in some ways that might be perfect and amazing for whatever you're doing.
Since you can get quality recordings from a modern day cell phone, having your music recorded and made public is no longer reserved just for professional musicians and famous artists. The technology of producing and distributing music has reached a level that is now accessible to everyone. Do you feel like technology has impacted that caliber of music now?
Yeah, I have to believe negatively. Going back to like about 1982, I was working with Arif Mardin, and he produced a lot of Aretha Franklin and Chaka Khan stuff. I think he was doing something with Chaka Khan. And I walked in the studio, and Jeff Porcaro was there, who was like your top session player in LA. And he had a Linn 1000 drum machine.
The Linn LM1 is one of the most influential drum machines to ever come out. It was the first drum machine to use acoustic drum samples and one of the first drum machines to be programmable. Because artists could create a drum pattern and the Linn would repeat it, this opened it up to being accepted by many of the top singers and songwriters of the 80s. Songs like all had their signature drum beats created using this piece of historic music tech.
Jeff was always like the hip cat, you know. First guy I knew to have CD player, whatever technology was out there, he was first to have it. And Jeff, what's going on? Check this out. You know. So he plays some beats into the little 1000. And then, boom, very rapidly you had drum machines on everything. Now, those records, of course, don't sound like drum machines today. The drum machine itself has gone through a complete evolution to where it's kind of its own instrument.
The drum machine as a whole changed the way musicians would write and record music. Its impact would be so great that it would influence entire genres, such as rap and pop. You could argue that rap could not be what we know it as today without the integration of these drum machines. Artists such as LL Cool J, the Beastie Boys, and NWA owe their unique drum sound and style to this piece of music technology. Preset drum machines like the 1959 Wurlitzer Sideman, which offered musicians built-in drum patterns, have been around since the 60s. This technology did not catch on as heavily due to its robotic sound and and an inability to reflect what musicians during that time were accustomed to hearing. Though it had buttons to allow a player to make a drum pattern on the spot, sequencing, or being able to program your beat into a drum machine, was a piece of technology not put into these machines until the 70s. Even if the sound of this drum machine may not have caught on in the 60s, it has found a way to find its place in modern day music, and many producers today find ways of mimicking and sampling these cool robotic sounds.
When I first went to LA, which was in 1976, every songwriter needed to demo their songs. So most songwriters had 8-track, 16, 24-track studios in their home. I always used to say, anywhere you stand in a residential area in LA, there's a studio within a quarter mile here, somebody's garage, you know. So at those sessions, they were demo sessions. They weren't through A&M, they were songwriter demos. So everybody had their little price, you know, $50, $100 a tune, $200 a day, whatever your rate was. And you'd be in the studio all day long, go over there, run the board yourself, you know, fix your drums the way you want, you know, work with the engineers. You're networking with the musicians. Every time you do a session, you're meeting new people. Some of those go on to a higher level. Maybe a producer calls you and say, hey, I like what you played on that track. Why don't you come in and we'll record? So you had this kind of grassroots way to network. Now, when the drum machine happened, that ended all of that, because right away, sequencing came on board with that. So now a songwriter can boom, boom, tsh, boom, boom, tsh, got his beat, don't need a drummer to play that, it's just a song demo. Okay, I need a keyboard part, sequence it, no longer need a keyboard player. So now the songwriters are doing all of the rhythm section work themselves. That ended not only the nickel and dime stuff that musicians would live off day to day, but it also ended the networking.
In the late 70s and early 80s, technology in music really began to take stride. Not only was it becoming more accessible for musicians to get a hold of and work with this equipment, the consideration of pitch and sound from these devices started to become important. These new technologies came with their advantages and disadvantages. What used to be a high skill cap job that could not be replicated without years of practice turned into something that record labels and artists could pump out in a matter of minutes without having to pay top dollar.
A well-constructed beat isn't necessarily mathematically perfect, that there's a construct of this that has human nature involved, going back to origins of man in Africa, especially, you know, they've been figuring this stuff out for a long time. Now we're at this point where you can take a person who doesn't sing in tune, and you could take me. I could sing a tune and autocorrect it and sound pretty good. I have good sound, but I don't have good pitch. You know, I'm not a singer. So you have drummers who really, you know, they're pretty shaky with their time, but you can quantize it and fix it all up. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer to me, you know. You can't tell the quality of the player used to be, you know, you had to come in the studio, get a chart, rehearse it once or twice, run the thing, get a great take, highly skilled thing. It took a long time to develop all those kind of skills. So when you turn into live playing, yes, well then, you know, on a live gig, you're really going to be able to know how a person plays. But in the studio, not so much. I tell my younger students, you know, we have to keep this thing alive. You have to keep people interested in seeing drummers play, because you kind of alluded to it earlier. We really don't need drummers for pop music anymore. Most of it's drum machines. A lot of it is stolen tracks from previous recordings that drummers did. Clyde Stubblefield's, you know, Funky Drummer, it's been the most sampled thing, you know, drum beat in the history of mankind. But he's not making any more money from that, you know.
Not only has technology changed the playing field for how musicians create and collaborate with music, it has also shaped how music is shared and sold. Since the invention of music streaming platforms, buying entire albums has become a thing of the past, and listening to music for free using services like YouTube and Spotify are abundant. With the quality of music technology improving, it has become easier and easier to replicate sounds from instruments or sampling. By using music production software such as Ableton Live, Logic Pro, and Fruity Loop Studios, an artist can easily have access to thousands of different instrument sounds and tones. As sampling has become a major tool in modern-day music, musicians have learned to record instruments of varying types and save them so they can access them using a tool called a MIDI controller. MIDI stands for Music Instrument Digital Interface, a standard in sending digitally encoded information about music between electronic devices, for example, a keyboard and a computer. This is one of the most important tools for a producer or a composer today. With a good pack of samples and a standard MIDI keyboard, artists can turn what looks like a piano into a full-blown orchestra, or a drum set, or voices. The possibilities are limitless, and collaboration with other instrumentalists is rarely needed anymore to get a specific sound you desire.
Digital recording on a laptop is 20 years old. You know what I mean? Like we're still new into this thing, and like more software developers that make plugins, software that alter the sound of recorded stuff on your computer. People are getting better and better and better at that. And like, you can mimic analog, like tape machine stuff pretty well if you know what you're doing, but you have to understand, and I think this is where a lot of people are at now. You have to understand like how this stuff works and what it does to a sound so that you can mimic it and make it sound analog or old.
It's hard to say if technology has really made the quality of music any better. But one thing is indisputable. It has liberated musicians in a way that they no longer need funding from entire companies to do what they love.
But the big picture of, again, kind of where we started the conversation, that the musician has to be technologically savvy now. You can no longer be like, I'm just going to perform. I mean, you really can't. I mean, it's at your loss. Why should you be subject to someone else's decisions over all these musical things that completely affect how you're going to be perceived by the listener? So you want a voice in that. So the more you know about technology, the stronger your voice can be, because you can express that.
In my opinion, what technology has done for music is given the artist options. Do you want your song to sound like it came out in the 70s? Well, we can do that. Do you want your song to have 300 clarinets? Well, we can do that too. While making this documentary, I had heard rumors from some friends of a music technology guru who lived deep in the mountains of the Berkshires. This guy is on the cutting edge of everything technical, and his home resembled Dexter's laboratory. I reached out to him as I wanted to get the perspective of an artist who has completely submerged themselves in music technology and made it a part of their sound and brand. He invited me to his studio, Shabby Road, where we spent the day talking about our love for music. Jules is a drummer, music producer, singer, songwriter, Ableton Live power user, who has over the last 10 years played over 1,000 nationwide gigs. He's even had some song placements in video games like NBA 2K Playgrounds. But what really got me excited to meet up with Jules was his 2019 audiovisual project titled Mad MIDI, which is a one-man show where Jules drums while triggering audio samples from a video with the accompanying visuals, all from his drum set in real time.
I think we live in such a quickly moving, attention-based economy. So we're in a spot where you get viral videos that define kind of the cultural, or act as cultural touchstones for different people, whether it's memes or viral moments like the slap or whatever it is, right, that we all can relate to. So to be able to live in a time where computers are fast enough to keep up with some of this stuff, I can go online after a moment like the Will Smith and Chris Rock thing happens and download the video, turn it into a sample, get the video clip of it ready to trigger, and be playing this moment that we can all relate to in almost no time. Like the turnover time's pretty quick, right? Like less than an hour almost to get that process done. And I wanted to be a filmmaker as a kid. That kind of pivoted to music, but it's always been in there. And I love visual medium, visual entertainment. So that's always been part of my vision, a theatrical kind of like greater than the sum of its parts thing. I remember seeing Blue Man Group for the first time, just totally changed my mind about production and entertainment and mixing mediums, comedy, dance, live stage tech, music, all these things, and just was a really definitive moment. So now I'm at this point where I can use visual things to communicate and show parallels between weird sounds or, you know, the visual nature of things that sound similar but look different, and yeah, just play the culture, you know? It's like a live zeitgeist remix. It's like sampling music. You know, I feel like sampling in general just got so steamrolled legally, where it's such a definitive American art and an amazing way to cross-pollinate old influences and new influences. So to take a visual, you know, version of that and be able to sample these things that we're all familiar with that tap into that familiarity but become a totally new thing has always been part of my vision. So yeah, using stuff like Resolume and luckily computers that are fast enough to handle that now allows me to speak and play these things and have motion too. You know, it's just such a part of it. Like hit a sample and see emotion with it just adds a whole nother layer. It's like singing 4D all of a sudden with these things.
So, how does this all work? How is one person playing an instrument, notably one that is not known for carrying melody, in a way that is so melodic, without the use of a backing track or other musicians? What would you say are your essentials that you bring with you outside of your drum kit, you know, your bass drums or whatever?
Yep, I guess the three, in addition to the regular drums that are key for that, are the drum trigger unit. So the trigger MIDI converter that takes the drum triggers on the drums and gets that info and performance into the computer. Because I was triggering the kick and snare samples from the record with my real drums, blending them together in what would be the second most essential part of that. This is the X32 board here, which I have another rack unit of. So this is, as I said, is my drum pedal board. So this is really important because this takes all my drum tones in, allows me to mix them and change them per song and really dial in that mix, as well as get it into my own ears. So I'm hearing that sound in real time as it's happening, which just helps me play better. So that's essential. And then third is Ableton Live and having that as that brain tying everything together. It's controlling this along with the arrangement. It's giving me my clicks and stuff I need to hear. It's taking the drum triggers in and turning those into those sounds.
One of the things that stood out to me in how Jules uses technology is his creativity in finding ways to use it to produce something truly unique. We got to talking about some of his interesting projects, and he really opened my eyes to just how far we can take the technology we have access to now.
So one cool way that I've used Ableton in a different context was on an art installation project in collaboration with an artist named Sandra Muss. So she made a piece called Portals, which were all these old doors from different houses in Miami that were like really cool, rustic, old like bungalow doors, different colors, very cool design. She took those, retrofitted them with mirrors and neon lighting in them, so there's like very cool looking lit up kind of obelisks, right? She made, I think there's like 6 or 7 of them. They were all placed around Eden Rock, the resort down there next to Fontainebleau, and my role was to create a living, breathing, evolving, independent, autonomous score to accompany these, because it was like a very ethereal kind of piece, and they're called Portals, and it's about jumping time and space and reflection and evolution and all this stuff was her intent with the pieces, which they were very evocative in that way. So what I used were Arduinos, which, if people don't know, are these little microprocessors. It's like a little board that's a very simple computer, and the ones I used were able to take weather sensors. So I had these additional little add-ons to the Arduinos that would listen to the wind speed, listen to humidity, the amount of light out in the environment, and based on that data coming in was turned into MIDI, sent into Ableton to control different stuff, and that would control a filter on sounds and open up if the wind blew harder, and if the dew point was over a certain amount. At the top of every hour, a new scene would play in Ableton, but it would kind of choose what to play based on certain data. So if it had been like a brighter, sunnier day for a while, a happier, brighter sounds would play. If it started getting darker or colder out or something like that, some more watery sounds and darker tones and different ethnic samples from just all over the world to give the feeling that, like, as you went to these different doors, you kind of hear the ambient faint sounds of kids laughing in Ghana, or like people playing traditional instruments in Asia or something like that, to just give this global transportive feel. And yeah, we had all these speakers set up outside. They're outdoor speakers, and it was just running on itself for like 5 days.
This collaboration of art and technology is exactly what I felt I was looking for in my research. This is the new frontier for musicians. A canvas in which musicality is not diminished by the technical tools being used, but amplifies the viewer's experience or the ability of the musician to express themselves. It is our job as musicians and artists to find a healthy way to utilize the tools available to us to create, while also holding true to the instruments and sounds that make music so special.
So yeah, basically this is just like a big Rube Goldberg machine is kind of how I look at it, but it serves the purpose of trying to find a new articulation for different sounds, right? Like we were talking before about how there's purists and, you know, traditional sounds, and people are apprehensive to like bring tech into their mix or whatever, but we're limited still on the types of articulation input that we can put in to create sounds and stuff, right? There's keyboards and key surfaces, there's drums and stringed instruments, woodwinds, brass, but often those are just associated with the noise that comes out of those instruments when you make them. So finding new ways of giving someone who has, you know, the ability to express themselves through a flute or through drums or something like that, and have wild new output from it, is naturally going to inspire new types of music and new types of grooves and just sensibilities that aren't always seen unified in certain ways. So really, Mad MIDI and my whole rig in here, I just look at it as one huge random kind of instrument that the front end articulation is a drum set and some iPads and some knobs and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just using the way I can musically express myself and have a stream of consciousness to trigger sounds and different things I like.
With technology not going anywhere anytime, my hope is that music technology can continue to be a tool that musicians use to create, while not being a crutch to create mediocre music just because it's easy and affordable. When technology is used with imagination, we can create some truly amazing things.